Tai ye hi aki ana ki ata kura. E tio he hoka he hou hu ko tarara wa takoto nei. Taka te hou ki tiri, taka te hou ki te kamati a mātu ni ki nita. Ia mā tara ki tai ye hi aki ana ki ata kura. E tio he hoka he hou hu ko tarara wa takoto nei. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
So be it. Okay, aloha everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, February 22nd, 2024, Alliance of Indigenous Nations Zoom. 60 sovereign indigenous nations, soon to be 160 sovereign indigenous nations, lawfully reclaiming their land, resources, and freedom for all people on Mother Earth. Oh, our Juno Award-winning performer is here. Awesome. Thank you, Errol. Well, Errol, if you don't mind, if you're ready, we'll just open up with the song and then I'll come back.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. This is going out to everybody.
Os.
God and me, what would it be, and would you call it to her face? If you were faced with him, all his glory, what would you ask him if you had just one question? God is great. Now, God is good. What if John was one of us? Just the dread like all of us. Now, just the Rasta on the bus, trying to make her way home. Make it home, make it home, make it home, make it home. God had a face. What would it look like? And would you want to see? If he meant that, you would have to believe in things like heaven and Jesus and the saints, and all them prophets. Come on, God is great. Now, God is good. Come on, What if God was one? Just the dread all of us. Just the Rasta on the bus, trying to make her way home. Make it home, make it home, make it home, make it home. Come on, make it home, it's God, it is great. Now, God is good. Well, now, come on, What if John was one of us? Just a tread all of us. Just a Rasta on the bus, trying to make her way home. Make it 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 home. She's like a whole little rolling stone. She's coming home. Coming home. Nobody calling on the phone. Make it home. Send them home and get it roll. Get roll. Get roll. Come on home.
Love you, Aaron. Awesome. Love you.
Woo! Excellent.
And thank you for that wonderful prayer, Marina. Amazing. Before we bring Sasha on, I just want to, while he's here and Marina and some of the newer people are here, I want to go over our 3 actions real quick so everybody knows what the Alliance of Indigenous Nations are doing. Our first action that we're doing is we've established the Alliance of Indigenous Nations International Tribunal. It's a place where you can come and obtain justice very swiftly, very inexpensively. We deal with law, not legal. We deal with people, not legal fictions, and there are no attorneys allowed unless they are a party in the matter. We're established under international law, and we assert our inherent sovereignty from Great Spirit, which has now been recently codified, whether you like the UN or not. We all know that they're probably not the good guys. We use their rules against them. And that's what we're doing, because Article 1 allows individuals, Article 3, the right to self-determine, and Article 5 says that we have the right to our own customs, laws, and traditions, which we've always had from day one. It's just been reaffirmed in the UNDRIP and ADRIP in America. The second action that we have going on is our International Peace Treaty. That's going around the world as we speak. The 60 nations have signed on. We're getting to the point where it's time, at least we believe it's time, and we'd like everybody's opinion. We're getting ready. We'd like to notice the Crown Corp, the USA Corp, the Vatican, and the UN Corp of our sovereignty and our parallel systems that we've established, and that we come in peace, and hopefully they come in peace to our people. So we need to get that notice ready. Anybody that would like to help us draft that notice, please put your information into the chat and say that you'd like to help with the notice that we're preparing, in the process of preparing. And then our third action that we have is right here, our usual every other Thursday International Guest Speaker Zoom. With that said, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Sasha Stone. Sasha's a former rock musician and artist. He grew up in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, throughout the War of Independence. He established Humanidad in 1999 and has worked across both the NGO and IGO sectors as an outspoken advocate of human rights and natural justice. He's instigated the peace initiatives and education programs, lobbied against human rights abuses in different parts of the globe. He's also the founder of the New Earth Project, an evolving blueprint for sustainable, sovereign, and self-determining communities, headquartered out of the world-renowned Akasha New Earth Haven in Bali. He's also the founder of the ITNJ, International Tribunal for Justice. He launched the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Human Trafficking and Child Sex Abuse at Westminster Central Hall in London in spring of 2018. He's also the founder of the World Health Sovereignty Summit. Welcome, Sasha. Aloha.
Aloha, John. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for convening this with such grace. Thank you, Marina, for the opening prayer. You're a very great spirit, and we're very blessed to have you here. And Errol, thank you for that wonderful performance. As a performer, recording artist, I know how difficult it is to balance sound on a live stream like this. You did a fantastic job. I could almost have done a capture, and that was the take, baby. That was great. Thank you. Very beautiful. I'm very honored to be here and to address you here today. Thank you very kindly for the invitation. In the preamble before the screen, before we went green, Michael Proper and myself and John were having a little dialogue with the group here. And I mentioned I've been in 29 countries in the last year, touched down in 29 countries. Now, three of the more interesting visits I had this year were in the past year, were in the first instance, the Sudan. I was in the Sudan for a couple of weeks just before the orchestrated war broke out. Curiously enough, I was there at the behest and the invitation of the general who had conducted successfully the coup d'etat, overthrowing a very corrupt 30-year incumbency, which was a puppet incumbency, proxy government in Africa, the utility of the globalist agenda. And the good general had overthrown that finally after 30 years of incumbency. And I was on the ground at the extension of his invitation. And we were studying the pyramids, the Nubian pyramids. This is the part of the world where the story of the Queen of Sheba emerges, who was brought before King Solomon in the temple, and was in a great sense, the great African Queen of Sheba, the Nubian queen, was historically the archetypal counterpoint to King Solomon. Very powerful totem and archetype. This is important to me because the single thing that needs to occur in our world at this time, under our custody, is a resurrection of the Eternal Mother. There has got to be a return to the bosom, to the womb. And there has to be a return in the sense that we, the patriarchy, that is now falling, quite palpably collapsing under a weight of Babylonian hegemony, of dominion and blood cult and dream spell, that has been the sanction of the Roman Catholic Church, essentially the Vatican conspiracy, which is behind a 500-year Holocaust against the black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin peoples of the world. But you can put into that melee the white skin people as well, if we understand the historical context of Dom Diversus, the sacking of the pagans and the Saracens, which was also an attack against, an assault against the Christic, Caucasian and white skinned people of the world historically. So it is not white against black, it never was. We've all been pitted against each other. And the 500-year blood cult that has waged war against the living sons and daughters of God under the aegis of corporate fictions, as John alluded to in his introduction, it comes down to that distinction between the living and the dead, between the night and the day, in that sense of our experience, of our expression. The papal doctrines of discovery 500 years ago gave a license to the crowns of Europe, essentially, to go forth and conquest and to butcher and steal and heist in the name of God the First Nation Aboriginal peoples of the world. That happened. That Holocaust continues to this day in the inner cities of countries all around the world. The systemic and endemic poisoning of all of humanity now through synthetic molecules, depleted uranium, weaponizing the atmosphere in the last 75 years since white man took the element of fire to the worst possible extent and built the atom bomb, courtesy of Oppenheimer and Einstein, two of the greatest minds that existed in the last century, and good men, by best accounts, who became the utility of the devil, unwittingly, possibly, most likely. But white man, in accordance with the Hopi and other prophecies, was given the privilege of taking forward the element of fire in our age, and we did, and we fucked up. We created the atomic bomb, and we tore the fabric of time-space, and we unleashed all measure of lower elemental intelligences into the field. Subsequent to the late 1930s of the Pacific Atoll testings, we unleashed the demon into the third density temporal realm. Be clear about that. And that gave rise to what we witnessed subsequent to the Second World War, an invasion of all of our lives by the corporation. The League of Nations, which had been set up prior to the United Nations, was a satanic and Luciferian agenda promulgated by deviant whiteskins under the Victorian rule. Again, we pull that name Oppenheimer out. We pull De Beers out, the gold and the diamonds of Africa. Cecil John Rhodes, the founder of my country, where I was born, Rhodesia. Empire carved a straight line through the undulating back of Mother Africa. And Dutch East India Company and the British East India Company, prior to that, had already sent their merchant ships all around the world. The Jesuits were certainly behind all of that enterprise, sending their confessor priests into the temples and the mosques and the palaces of sultans and rajas and kings from Southern Africa to the Inuits in the north, across the plains of America, Central South America, Southeast Asia, all around the world. The Jesuits infiltrated the bedchambers of the kings and queens of the First Nations, conducted treaties with everyone, lied, stole, heisted, and through stealth and infiltration, which was the core methodology of the Sabbatean element within the Roman Catholic Church, operating through the crowns of Europe, operating through their mercantile apparatus, they managed to tiptoe into every single human being's life, whether it was a mud hut in Swaziland or an igloo in the North Pole, and began the process of fictionalizing our reality, of infiltrating the relationship that existed between the living sons and daughters of God and God, infiltrating the relationship between the men and women of the living soil and the living soil itself. And these two elements could not be more important. The living soil represents the paramagnetic forces, the telluric forces of this entire earth plane. All of the Christic coding, all of the song of the ancestors that's embedded in this earth plane is contained within those paramagnetic forces and telluric forces, the elemental forces that inform every aspect of our real reality. And of course, the sky, the dielectric universe, our relationship with God, Atman, Alpha, Omega, that was infiltrated. And we have been securitized. Every living soul on the surface of the earth is now securitized, monetized, digitized. It gets a great deal worse than that, of course. This is stealth infiltration of all living systems by artificial, digitized, lower elemental, subdimensional intelligences. And the delivery mechanism of this nightmare has been government. Govern to control, meant mind control. Government is mind control. It's all it ever was. It's all it ever can be. It is a godless, goddamned fiction of the highest order of magnitude. It is the extension of the Roman Catholic Church and all monotheistic religiosity. Religion is the thief in the house that stole the relationship between sons and daughters of God and God. Religions are an apparatus, a technology They are the progenitor of government, and government is the progenitor of the great Luciferian false light matrix, which has now fallen upon us and cast a cloak across the surface of the earth. It is you and I, this generation, this assembly, in the living moment, that have to awaken from within that dream spell. And we are the ones who have to activate the living flame, the living gospel, in the true sense and in the true tradition of all of the mystical traditions, whether you are Islamic or Buddhist, Hindu, Catholic, it's immaterial. We must now individually awaken from within our own dream spell. We must see the distinction between the living and the dead, between the fiction and the real. In Sudan, I discovered in the desert that there are great secrets and mysteries that are known to the desert dwellers that have not been discovered yet by the United Nations, by UNESCO. I am a former Director General in the United Nations Intergovernmental Arena, and I'm the one to tell you it is a grave abomination. There are many good people trapped in that institution. I was lobbied in 2008 to join the United Nations and come in and help sex up the agenda. I foolishly agreed to, in the end, enough good people on the inside of the UN led me to believe that they would give me the leverage I needed on the inside to make changes. They were unable to do so. After 2 years, I withdrew. I never took a dime. I would never take coin from that organization. But it is beyond redemption. It does not and cannot deliver anything that is living. It cannot deliver anything that is living. Be clear about that. The World Health Organization is a Holocaust organization. The World Trade Organization's central remit is to destroy any possibility of human exchange and transaction. Any form of real, honorable trade is destroyed by definition and distinction of the interference of the goddamn statutory requirements and codexes and registrations and statutes. Lies, all of them. Lies, spells and bonds. The same spells and bonds which were cast upon our ancestors 500 years ago, 400 years ago, 300 years ago. It did not change. It just became slick and smooth. The devil has infiltrated our very mRNA and DNA, courtesy of vaccination programs and pharmaceutical enterprise and agrochemical enterprise, facilitated by those statutes and codes and regulations and laws. They are not laws. Nothing that offends the human soul is a law. Nothing that offends your soul is a law, ever. Nor must you ever bend the knee to it. That's incumbent upon you and I, the living man, the living woman of the living soil, to not ever bend the knee under any circumstance. Coercion and manipulation, that is the method of the devil. We have been thrown into fear, survivalism, reflexivity, reductivity. We are undignified, disingenuous. We have lost sight of our majesty as a species, as a genus. That resurrection happens now, in our day, under our custodianship, our stewardship, you and I, no one else. There is no cavalry. There is no Pleiadian starship that is permissioned to rescue us from ourselves. There is no Ezekiel's chariot. It is you and I, in the living moment, in the living gospel, who are required to resurrect the entirety of our species, all living systems of this earth plane. The honor, the dignity that we need to infuse within ourselves is epic, vast, monumental. We are required to still the mind and to look deeply, deeply within the blood song, deeply within our blood song. The ancestral blood song cannot lie, does not lie. It's not capable of lying. It's the only thing that speaks pure truth. We must reconvene with that blood song. We are the point of redemption. the trauma patterns, the psycho-civilizational, psycho-cultural trauma that is ingrained and butchered into us over millennia can all be absolved, all of it redeemed, all of it can and must be redeemed in the living moment of now. The Sudan fell a few days after I left. There was a coup fostered. The good general who had been on the brink of resurrecting his country from a 30-year incumbency of Anglo-American proxies failed, alas, and a counter coup occurred, and we don't know how things will turn out there. I need to be careful. I don't speak too far out of turn. Our beloved brothers on the ground could get into harm. I was also in Turkey this year. I went on a pilgrimage of Abraham. I wanted to move through that part of the world, which is so steeped in history. I went to the oldest civilization that has been discovered, Karahan Tepe. I was in the desert there, about an hour and a half away from Göbekli Tepe, and I was with the guide and then my beloved mother. I took my mother, who was an absolute Trojan warrior. I took her with me, and there was an old archaeologist in Karahan Tepe at the archaeological dig in the desert. And he was with a hat on his head and he was squatting over a pit. And no one else was there. A couple of men with machine guns, military guys who were protecting the perimeter of this archaeological discovery, given that it was so important, the oldest discovered ancient civilization in history, purportedly. The old archaeologist in the pit at one point beckoned to me, and I went over to him. And my mother was trailing me. And he said to me, look down into that pit. That's the oldest artifact ever recorded in history. We haven't taken it out yet. We discovered it 2 days ago. But that is the oldest artifact ever discovered on Earth in academia. Look, because you'll never see it again. It'll disappear. It'll be taken by helicopters somewhere. And I looked into the pit. And as I was looking into the pit at this artifact, which was about 5 or 6 foot tall, a stone effigy, the two military guys came hurtling over with their guns, shouting in Turkish to the architect, get these people away from that pit. They're not allowed to see that artifact. And the old academic kindly remonstrated with the military and said to them, oh, bugger off. They're only a couple of idiot tourists. Who cares what they see or what they don't see? And the military were like, no, take them away. Of course, whilst this was all going on, God bless her, my mother was taking a photograph illegally of this artifact. And I have the photograph. I've been trying to find it to show you. Nonetheless, I can tell you what it was. And this is my story. The effigy of the oldest discovered artifact in academic history that I was lucky enough to see 2 days after it was unearthed earlier this last year in Karahan Tepe Desert in Turkey was a effigy of a man clutching his penis with both hands. And that is the story that I have to tell you. And I just felt it was so totemistic that the oldest discovered effigy in archaeological history should surface as a little man clutching onto his penis with both hands. I just thought it was delightfully humorous. That to me is symptomatic and totemistic of the fall of empire, the end of a patriarchy, the end of the false light matrix, the end of Roman Catholic and imperial European hegemony over humanity, the end of government mind control, the end of the United Nations and its godless franchise of fiction and death and deception. And I was honored, deeply honored, that the spirits of the land had called me to witness that, the last of the patriarchs. who was also the earliest one. I then went to various countries, and 2 weeks ago I was in the Vatican. And I went to the Vatican en route to the United States to meet with some of the Hopi messengers that I was just with the last few days. And I went to the Vatican to embrace a 93-year-old cardinal who has for the last 3 years been a source of huge inspiration to me, and who has fed information to me from inside the Vatican walls. More recently warning that the disease X that is planned this year by the Sabbatean status quo is likely to happen during the swimming Olympics in Paris this year. Nonetheless, that's now in the hands of Interpol, good people in the US military and Interpol. We've been feeding the information there. I went to embrace the Cardinal and thank him on behalf of humanity for his service in telling us what was coming out of the Sabbatean basement, so to speak. Alas, they got to him before I arrived at the Vatican, and he was injected against his will, according to the last phone call he made to us. And he was at the coma by the time I arrived. I made a short film in the Vatican City, which I'll be releasing in honor of this man. The reason why I'm mentioning him is because I am no fan of the Vatican or the Catholic Church, obviously. But I'm trying to illustrate the fact that the devil always serves God's design, and that within the blackness and the darkness and the wickedness that prevails and that exists in the status quo, there is always the hand of God, always beautiful souls who are the atom seed of light and who are the flame keepers. And they could be Hopi messengers and Hopi elders. They can be Aboriginal dream timers. They can be 93-year-old cardinals in the Vatican itself. It is good humans who are united by truth, the flame of pure truth, who stand in honor within the Atman of self and stand directly beneath the gaze of the central sun, where they cast no shadow. And they do not malign and slander other beings. They do not throw rocks at the back of the heads of their fellows. They do not foment war or disease or misery in this world. You're good humans, and we are everywhere, and we are legion, and we are the Rainbow Tribe, and we're coming together, and we will and must resurrect the ancestral blood song. I am very blessed to be working with a number of different factions in the Native American traditions, and seeing where and how we're able to bring together the 740 plus First Nation peoples of the American Plains together to form a circle. Whether that happens next midsummer in 25 or 26 or 27, I cannot say. It's a huge logistical undertaking, which I'm beginning with some blessed souls. Let's see how that plays. I just know that it is important that we purpose ourselves and our lives and our minds and our hearts and our resources toward enactment, embodiment, and manifestation. We must enact, we must embody, we must manifest in this world. We are not fictions, we are not proxies, we are not subject to Caesar any longer unless we think we are. And I've been screaming from the rooftops for many, many, many long years now, that every time you fill out a form with the block black capital letters of your name, the fiction, you are being securitized. You're being monetized. You'll never see the money. We must stop participating in the registrations and the tabulations and the fiction. We must stop paying personal income taxes. They are unlawful and illegal. They are us committing crimes against ourselves. We are defrauding ourselves. Government is involved in an unconscious heist of epic proportion, stealing trillions of dollars off sons and daughters of God using treasury bonds and all sorts of chicanery. But we are participating in it. It is not complex or difficult to enact, embody, and engage your own sovereignty and your own jurisdiction. We can do it. We have the technologies now. Michael Proper, who's in this room right now, is one of the leaders in the world in this revolution. And it's a true revolution. It comes from the heart. It is technological, yes. It is digitization, yes. It is working in the invisible realms, but it offers us redemption. We have everything we need to step outside of the Luciferian false light matrix, and the satanic, Saturnian, Sabbatean agenda will not have any thrall over us any longer if we rescind, redact, revoke, and retract. Rescind, redact, revoke, retract. That's what we need to learn to do in order to dismantle the apparatus of evil, and in order for us to self-actualize and then step off the checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil. We are subject to the rules and the fancies of, and the unusual punishment, the cruel and unusual punishment of that checkerboard happens precisely because we place ourselves upon it. It could not be more simple. The one thing is the return of the Rainbow Tribe. This must occur now. All the First Nation peoples of the world must settle down and step back into spirit now. They must stop swinging dicks. Excuse the gauche expression. It is a base expression, but that's exactly what is going on. And it must cease and desist. I've spent 24 years traveling this world, 25 in point of fact this year, traveling the world. I've traveled millions of miles. I've spent millions of dollars, all my resources. And I put so much energy into the pursuit and the inquiry of what does it take for us to collate the alphabet of the human heart ourselves and start to write the script ourselves, step outside of the programming. We can do it, but I can say this much based on my experience, that all too many of the hereditary leaders and the paramount chiefs and Arakis and the leading lights, cultural lights, are themselves caught up in far too much ego, far too much false light, internecine wars going on in these cultural basements. And that must stop. By the grace of the living God, it must stop. We must unify. All of the First Nations must find equilibrium and harmonium. Now, I will state this as a son of God here and now, and you will hear me. We are not capable of making those determinations as a fellowship of men because we are still caught up in the thrall of the false light. The warrior class of men is just as bad as the old class of calcified men. We are entrenched in false light and ego in many ways. There must be a return of the talking stick to the grandmothers. That is my critical message to this assembly. We must all now revert to the universal law 101, which runs through the ancestral veins of all of you. The warrior class of men are not equipped to make determinations right now. We are too caught up in synthetic molecules, gambling, alcoholism, fentanyl and other drug abuses, bad dreaming. Take the knee to your grandmothers. Take the knee. The grandmothers will give us the green light. But we must resurrect the Eternal Mother. That's my message. Thank you.
Spoilery. Beautiful. Thank you for that message. Sasha, we'd like to open it up for some Q&A. Is that okay with you?
I'm very happy to do that. Thank you, John.
Okay, here we go. Dr. Rahman. Aloha.
Thank you, Aloha. Thank you, Sasha. Wow, what a beautiful summary of the entire setup, the cabal that we're dealing with, the evil and the march to truth. You set out the problem, and you also gave the answer and our journey forward. So thank you ever so much. It's such a pleasure being able to speak to you, although I've heard you many times. I just wanted to share a few common things between you and I. And one of them is that you and I are both born in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. And that upbringing, it's interesting that we share. I left Zimbabwe in the mid-60s. I think you went through the independence fight and UBI and all the rest of it. But we both experienced the full force of the Kabbalistic British Raj traditions, suffered through it under the hands. And of course, when I moved to UK, I in fact saw it at first hand, how these things operated through the Privy Council, the judicial system, and all the things that you read out. And of course, the other thing I resonate with you and Vivian is, of course, the ancient traditions. And because I'm brought up in that, right, the Vedic Hinduism, etc., are very close. And you mentioned Atman and other things, and I've heard you talk about it. And so part of the journey is to get back to those ancient roots, which are embodied in all traditions, not just Hinduism, Buddhism, shamanic, everything is there. And that's what you are imploring, and I resonate so strongly with you. But going back to Zimbabwe, just a comment and then a question. You know Zimbabwe ruins, and
Yes.
I've been there. It's just amazing structure. And it was interesting to learn, and I know Glenn is on, he's talking about that link with Zimbabwe, ruined the Adams Circle in South Africa, and Michael Tellinger and Osmonovich. In fact, they've looked at the dome of the Zimbabwe, and they found that it has the highest negative ion concentrations anywhere in the world. And so these devices, this structure, Zimbabwe ruined, was used by, I think, the Anunnaki to take on, excavate gold and take it away. And I know Glenn talks about this, he's written about it as well. And of course, that the Anunnaki, the nasty ET race or whatever it is, and my question, or the other thing about Zimbabwe is, there's gold, but there's tobacco. And of course, now we recognize that this has such a beneficial impact in these COVID days. And I'm talking about nicotine, you know what I mean. So Zimbabwe is famous for gold and tobacco. So my question to you is, the Anunnaki, are they still having an impact through the hierarchy of things that you've mentioned, you know, the Cabal, the 500-year history, or is it that they are not there, but we are still impacted by the intermarriage and all the rest of it? And to me, that man with holding a penis is in fact the embodiment of that spirit. I just want to like to hear your comment. I'm sorry I've gone on a bit.
Not at all. Dr. Rahman, I could listen to you for a lot longer. Thank you for the kindness, and I'm very happy to embrace you through the screen. So I love the question. I only wish that you had been in this immersive retreat in the Arizona desert that I was with the Hopi conducting for the last few days, because that would have been a perfectly anointed question in this in the gathering of souls there. In point of fact, let me just first address the most important issue here connected to your intelligent question, that it is not appropriate to speak of the Anunnaki in terms of negative. They are neither negative nor positive. They are like all things in the realm of duality in this universe. They are perfectly neutral in a sense. They are both good and evil, black and white. The story of Cain and Abel is the same story as the story of Enki and Enlil, the two archetypal male progenitors of this seeding of humanity connected to our archaeohistory and archaeocosmological story. Having said that, that is also not correct, because actually the genius who fashioned humanity in the petri dish, so to speak, of these Anunnaki were neither Enki nor Enlil, but were in point of fact their relative, their female cousin, Ninhursag. So the progenitor scientist of this seeding of humanity was a female. We are born of the mother in that sense. But be sure, we are grown in petri dishes. And this is what most religious people have a very, very hard time understanding, that we are part of a galactic and cosmic genetic story. The human being today is the galactic genome. We are the galactic hybrid. We have been hybridized by so many different intelligences and species over millennia. It is extraordinary. Another thing I'd like to just hit on the head right now is the 13.4 or 14 billion year commonly understood timeline of our universe, of our world, of our cosmos. This is not so. We can track the fiction of time back 954 billion years in point of fact. I'm going to be attempting to do that in October this year in a 10-day period with who I regard as the greatest archaeocosmologist in the world. We're going to do everything we can to map this 954 billion year timeline so that we can put an end to this nonsense of time altogether in our mind's eye. But the short answer to the question is that the Anunnaki have played a role, a seminal progenitor role in the fashioning of who and what we are cosmogenetically. This is true, but they just set the pace. There have been other seedings of humanity in ages before, and there will be likely in the future, so-called future, none of which is relevant to us. The only thing that is relevant to us is the now, the geometry of now, where we take the chaos, the cacophony, the maelstrom of the song and dance and orchestra and symphony within the blood, and we redeem it and we absolve it. You and I in the now, all of it can absolve in one perfect moment of timelessness, where we find the Solomon's key, the Holy Grail, is how you and I, in a state of actualized grace, actually disidentify perfectly from the fiction of time in one moment of timelessness. That is the kiss point. That is the still point. That is the ball that contains the red mercury in the nexus point of the Vajradorj, that your great progenitor, god kings in the Mahabharata, in the Hindu epics, were terraforming worlds and conducting galactic wars. And it is the still point between this and that, between night and day, between Shiva and Shakti. And this has exactly always been our access point to Atman, to Alpha Omega, to God, is the still point where we cast no stone, where we're not capable of judging or condemning. There cannot be any judgment of anything, because everything is perfectly appointed and perfectly anointed. And it is only the synthesis and the true understanding of that that is the Solomon's key, or the Jacob's ladder, or the exit strategy, or the only way in which we can escape the matrix is by falling perfectly into the center of the matrix through coherence. And coherence can only emerge through the flame of pure truth. And it's a white hot flame. And to stand in it, you must burn in mercury. It's an alchemical phenomenon. But I love the question. And the short answer is yes, we carry the echo of the Anunnaki in our blood to this day, which is why we are on the one hand, seeking only to love and be loved. And on the other hand, we're seeking to overpower and to dominate and yeah, it's one or the other. And we're caught in that delightful song and dance on the checkerboard, precisely because we haven't learned the enigma. We haven't cracked the code yet, most of us. We're getting there. We're definitely getting there. But the problem, of course, is the so-called mRNA interventionism right now, and the fact that human biotechnology is so saturated with graphene oxide and hydrogels and all sorts of wicked chemistry. And I say wicked chemistry because by my reckoning and understanding, it is precisely the source code of the devil equates to the synthetic molecule. And when you look at glyphosate and you look at fluoride and you look at aluminum and barium and phosphate, strontium, and all of the synthetic molecules which rain down upon us and which we imbibe and which we breathe in to our living systems, we are saturated with synthetic molecules. And that's been part of the priming process of getting us ready for a great Luciferic age, whereupon a scion of some bloodline is going to be resurrected and appointed to the throne of Lucifer in the Temple of Solomon in Israel, which is being built right now, courtesy of the House of Rothschild and the Sabbateans in Tel Aviv, who are building and rebuilding the Temple of Solomon. This is all midnight Mason stuff that's going on. These Babylonian priests have been conducting and orchestrating these storylines for millennia, since the murder of the Cathars and the Essenes of old. But it goes on and on and on. Again, all that we need to know is that the escape strategy from the pandemonium, the chaos, the dualistic, paradoxical chaos of our reality is always contained in the here and now, and the degree to which you and I step into our true sovereign jurisdiction, our relationship with the divine, whereupon we assume the Christed mantle in one perfect moment of timelessness. And that Christed mantle is impervious to any threat. We walk through the valley of death and the shadow of death, fearing no evil. We can enter the lion's den, as did Daniel, the apocryphal Daniel, precisely because there is nothing to fear whatsoever.
Thank you, Sasha. Such a beautiful, beautiful and unfolding of our true agenda. And I truly applaud you and appreciate what you've said. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roman.
Susan T.
Well, Sasha, thank you so much for this incredible presentation. One of the most powerful I've heard from you since 2014, when I first met you with New Earth Nation, was working with you on that. And I can only say I am just so moved by your words. All of them, they're so pure from the heart. And your deliverance is definitely in the now. Your presence is very strong and powerful and clear. And we are all guided by the divine force of God. And I honor you for that. There's so much in what you've said. I mean, I can't really pick out any one thing or that it stands out any more than another, except for the point of being and living in the now, in the presence, in the present day. And what I wonder about is that I know you've been doing presentations with the Lazarus Initiative, and you've been meeting people all over the world. So you've been garnering, and you're like the Christ himself walking around the world. That's how I see. And certainly of that, I feel that essence and that power, having met him myself when I was 2. And I know that we have much to do, all of us. So what is the greatest message that you can give to us in regards to how do we get off that roller coaster that many have put themselves on in their mind? I mean, you keep stressing about we have to be in the now, because it is in the now. That's all we have. We don't have the past or the future. It's only what we're doing in the now. So what is it that those who are struggling, can do to break that spell that has been cast or that we have cast ourselves by what we think and what we've been programmed into or what we've been guided and led into.
Well, thank you, Susan, for the kind words in the first instance. Very, very deeply felt and very gracious. And indeed, we do, all of us represent the messianic principle. Certainly everyone who has taken the time to present themselves here today in this spirit of fellowship connected to the resurrection of the First Nation peoples, essentially, because we recognize that it is precisely the resurrection of that blood song, of the ancestral blood song in the living moment, that is the point of redemption for the whole of the planet. That is the whole, rainbow prophecy, and it's connected to the custodianship and the stewardship that we find ourselves today as the relevant custodians and stewards of the status quo. The single quality, to try to answer your question, the single quality that I believe is most relevant in the moment, in the now, in order to crack this spell and to break through that Hermes veil, so to speak, between the land of the dead, which we inhabit, in the realm of the fictitious, the white man's poison, the thrall, the Luciferian false light matrix, all of that stuff. The single quality, in my view, that is required is irreverence to false authority, irreverence to anything that offends the soul. We are each of us children of God, and we are each of us embraced by the one Spirit. And our failure to recognize that is what causes us to judge and to cast stones and to factionalize. And there begins the trial of separation, from which each of us now here are seeking to relinquish and to release. So I would suggest that at the end of days, where we find ourselves now, at the end of days, at the end of time, the one thing each of us must individually do in order to activate the morphogenetic flame and the collective upshift, it must be to be able to discriminate. And taking the knee again to Caesar, paying coin to Caesar, filling out forms with block black capital letters, and enjoining the witchery and the black magic of Saturnian priests and midnight elements that have operated through the corridors of power. By power, I'm talking about false light power. And again, this is the legacy and the franchise of the whore of Babylon. Where and how the good Christic faith, the message of the great master from Nazareth, which was assumed and taken forward by the great Cathar priesthood, the Essenes and the priesthoods of old, who themselves were murdered, butchered, bludgeoned, and extinguished by the centurions of Rome and the Caesars of Rome, certainly leading up to the 4th century in the Council of Nicaea, where the Christian faith was co-opted, commandeered, reformatted, and flipped into Luciferianism, essentially a false light technology, which then coursed its way through the world through 1066 and Doomsday, when the powers that be at that time, who were Babylonian priests, essentially began the process of tithing and tabulating everything that moved in Europe principally, but it franchised around the world. And that thing emerged into the establishing of financial dominion in the city of London, Londinium, which was the extension of the Roman Empire. And that Londinium gave birth to one of the greatest psyops in history of our world, which was the era of Queen Elizabeth I. And Queen Elizabeth I, who masqueraded as being a virgin queen, was nothing of the sort. She was a harlot. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging it, just suggesting. She was a whore. She was not a virgin queen. She was profligate, and she was very sullied, morally speaking. And alas, underneath the thrall, the masquerade of that great deception that she was a virgin queen with a divine right to rule, John Dee was in the basement cooking up bad chemistry and invoking demons into the laboratory, as were many in that day, in that age. The black nobility had emerged throughout Europe and were variously patrons of alchemists and chemists in the laboratory. And the bottom line is that bad dreaming by the white man, essentially, under the dominion of the crowns of Europe, is what gave rise to the papal doctrines of discovery, which were and remain the most evil tracts ever issued anywhere on the surface of the earth, to my knowledge, giving license to go forth in conquest and massacre the black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin peoples. And so it is that 500-year hegemony that we need to release ourselves from, and it must come through the agency of the white skin beginning to dream wisely. And that is why blessed young people in countries all across the world are beginning to try to. Why do you think these kids are sticking tattoos all over their bodies and gargling ayahuasca and microdosing on mushrooms? It is a deep, deep, visceral need, desire to get back into convention with the ancestral song, because we've lost it. The First Nation peoples have not lost it. They may be largely belligerent and largely drunk in deserts, in the Aboriginal deserts. They may be marginalized and disenfranchised and poisoned, but I know that the ancestral song is loud and clear. And our capacity to hear that song or not will determine whether we perish or not. And Susan, to answer the question finally and repeat myself, it is the degree to which we are able to enter into the true sovereign jurisdiction of our relationship with the divine that determines whether or not we will survive. And that means stop taking the knee to false dominion and false light authority.
I hear, whom do you serve? God or Mammon? Mammon being matter rather than love. God is love. So the message really evokes that response. So I think we have to just remember who we are in truth as love. And remember that, because we are the manifestors of what we think.
Bravo.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. That was powerful. Thank you so much.
Before I call on Marilyn, I just want to remind everybody, if you can, just ask your questions so everybody gets a turn, because lots of hands are popping up and he can't stay here forever. So please ask your question, and if there's more time, we'll come back. Marilyn, go. And by the way, if you're putting a question into the chat, I'm not keeping up with the chat, so just raise your hand and ask your question. Go ahead, Marilyn.
It is a great privilege that I have the opportunity to ask a question. I've been listening to you for quite some time, since watching John Mappin's live videos through Camelot Castle. And my friend Adam Master, who is a healer, had the opportunity of meeting you very recently, a few days ago, in Sedona. It's a great privilege. Thank you. the question I have is, as we all know, there are a lot of different entities that walk upon us, and how can we recognize these shapeshifters, reptilians, before we engage in conversation with them? I see these type of people as very narcissistic, very ego-based, but how can we protect ourselves from engaging in these type of individuals? That's what I would like to know.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for your kind words and for the question, which I think I understand sufficiently to try to give an answer to. In the first instance, I can only speak the truth that I have lived and experienced. And what I know is that we do not need to protect ourselves from anything ever, under any circumstances. We have innate protections built into us. And again, the resurrection of the blood song is integral to us understanding the hyperdimensional physics, so to speak, of exactly what I'm talking about. But the fact of the matter is that if we are standing in truth and conducting right action in this world, we are already participating in the path of least resistance to the highest outcome, always, in all ways. And that is the atom seed of truth. That is the flame of truth. That is the Christed mantle. That is the message of all the mystical traditions and the Song of Ages speaks to us being alive and present in the here and now, and being attentive to the sound of the ethers and the sound of the telluric forces of the earth. And if we are alert and present, there is nothing to protect and nothing to defend, because understand that the Luciferic matrix or false light matrix from which we are now seeking to self-realize and emancipate ourselves as a species is a thrall of the fallen light of Atlantis, so to speak, that still exists in the ethers, precisely because we have failed cyclically, generationally, civilizationally, to actualize morphogenetically and create that upshift at the collective level. There has always been individuals who have engaged and enacted and embodied bodhisattva, who have become living saints and prophets. Many of the great hereditary leaders and paramount chiefs of our day today are wisdom keepers and oracles and viziers from around the world are indeed the flame keepers. Some are not. Some of them are crypto elders and crypto hereditary leaders, and they have no station whatsoever. But that truth will be known through their song. That truth will be heard through the resonance of their words. To answer your question, if I am met with a devil, my psionic gut intelligence tells me that devil is coming before it comes around the corner, because it's not about time and motion. It's quantum, it's subspace. The psionic intelligence is the shamanic intelligence, is what the Aboriginal and First Nation peoples have kept as a flame for humanity. And the resurrection of our genus, our species, our age is going to be dependent on the degree to which we can hear that song and tap into that psionic consciousness, which, to break it down for liberal intellectuals, we have a brain and a mind. This is a very faulty technology. It's magnificent, but it's faulty as hell. We also have a heart, which is an emotional, reactive technology that is beautiful, immensely powerful, and faulty as hell. We also have a third intelligence, a gut intelligence, our instinct, the umbilical. That's the psionic intelligence. That's the typhonic consciousness. That is the point of inception that connects us to the Great Mother. So when we situate our consciousness and the seat of our consciousness, the throne of our consciousness, and we seat it in the umbilical, and we have become actualized in that state of being, that state of witness, does not judge, cannot judge, doesn't feel, doesn't think. Beyond thought and beyond feeling is knowing. So this is part of the wisdom of the true ancestral song. We need to sit in our gut instinct is the answer to the question. And we will always invoke the privilege of the protection of the gods. In that way, certainly it served me well enough. And trust me, I've dodged enough bullets to know.
I could listen to you all day, Sasha. You're so romantic with your words. Thank you very much.
God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Aloha, Joshua. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Sasha, for being here today. I want to ask a question and make a comment about the Children of the Rainbow. 30 years ago, I had met with people like Danny Bahima from the Hopi territory, the last living prophet of the Hopi territory at the time. I have so many things that have been happening. I also want to acknowledge my ambassador that's here for Svedexel Nation. We have recently ratified Svedexel Nation. It's a Hapmelim word, and Svedexel means rainbow. For 30 years, I have been working towards ratification of a nation that would allow traditional and hereditary sovereign indigenous to become a part of. So many have been pushed out of the reserves. I've worked with many reserves across Canada, realizing that they are federally owned, operated, and funded. They've pressured so many of the good, kind people that I've connected with, and many of them in recent months that I thought would be our hereditary clan mothers, and have passed, and many people are passing quickly. But we are forming, and the call of the Children of the Rainbow, it's very evident that these things are being propelled very quickly. When we first formed our nation, we were making plans and trying to do this and trying to do that. And we were forced to pull back our personal sovereignty. We were forced to pull back and only work with the rhythm of the spirit and make decisions based on a pull, based on a quick open door that we would enter and work. And now we're at a place where we can, with lands, to offer a place for people to go and live in relative safety. I do have a video, and I'm wondering, my question was, do you have a coalition of First Nations groups or people that are moving forward in spirit and in a way that, like, one of the things we notice when we move in that, the plans that the agencies who come against us, they don't know what we're doing next. And we move very quickly into areas that allow us to have brought Svedexel Nation together. We have a coherent community. We're connected with thousands of people, not only across Canada, but the world, that are working with us.
Yes.
Anyway.
Chief Joshua, thank you very much indeed for your gracious words. John, with your permission, can I share my screen momentarily?
Absolutely. You should be able to go.
Thank you.
Set it up for you. Yep.
I just set this up. Can you see this screen okay?
Yep.
Are you seeing
go.
a large slide? Okay. Are you seeing a large slide? Yep. Okay.
New Earth Festival.
This is just what we did just on the eve of COVID breaking out in 2019 in Bali, Indonesia. And I'll walk you through it. This was the beginning of the great work that I'm involved in, which is the resurrection of the ancestral song and the blood song of ages. And it was incredibly powerful. This was the first time in history that the high priests were gathering together in Indonesia, in Bali, to conduct ceremony under the level of the human gaze. Never happened before in history. It was of huge consequence. This was bringing the elevated priesthoods back down to ground floor. Reconvening relationship with the living sons and daughters of God. This is at our New Earth base in Bali. And it was immensely powerful. We brought together the 27 ancient kingdoms of Indonesia for the first time in their history. This is the kind of thing that should have been done in the last 75 years by the United Nations and UNESCO and all of their bullshit, their grandiose nonsense, spending billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in concretizing a globalist agenda and doing nothing to restore peace and harmony and serendipity. In the first instance, we need to acknowledge the fact that the Vatican crimes and the crimes of the parent corporation against the First Nation peoples of the world needs to be redeemed. They were kicked off their thrones, their palaces stolen, their kingdoms ransacked. None of the treaties have been honored, to my knowledge, anywhere on the surface of this earth. So it is up to me and my team to raise the money, get the resources together, and resurrect and bring together in Southeast Asia the ancient kings of kings and the Rajas, the hereditary leaders, and restore some semblance of dignity, powerful and moving. We did not go public with this. We did not do this to raise money from the public purse or to raise profile in the media, kept the media away from this. And yes, I will grant you, I do look like a Vatican agent there with my sunglasses on, but it was a hot day. This is powerful stuff, very powerful stuff, bringing all of the interfaith leaders together, resurrecting the primal cultural arteries, allowing the blood to start to flow again and restore the song. My Lord, how powerful this work was and is and remains to this day. Now, that was in Southeast Asia. And after this particular ceremonial event, uniting the kingdoms of the longest nation on earth, the biggest Muslim population on earth, over 300 million Muslims, engineered religion, orchestrated, franchised to the people of Southeast Asia, 17,600 islands, we essentially brought together here in this ceremonial event. And we financed it. We made it happen. And after this event, we immediately did something else which was very important. I'm hearing somebody's noise in the background of
Yeah,
somebody's.
if you're not muted, could you please mute? Sorry, Sasha.
It's Edward Moses.
Okay. This here was the sultans and the rajas for the photo call, and me on the right looking very nervous standing there because I genuinely was afraid of an assassin's bullet that night, because if any one of these amazing souls had been harmed, it would have destroyed our efforts, and I was desperately nervous about it.
Sasha, we are planning a gathering here in Canada, very similar to what you're doing there, because the true hearts, the children of the rainbow, and those who are moving forward in a true way, because even within the Away community, there are so many people who are NPCs and are actually very narcissistic and moving their own way, but it's a mimic of truth. And then there's truth. And what I find, and with the people that we're constantly dealing with in our coherent community, is we live by the spirits of love, of truth, and mercy, kindness, goodness. We captivate ourselves with those things, and that's what gives us strength to move and allows us to move forward. And I yield, and I thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you. I will just show you what we did after the festival. We launched the World Health Sovereignty Summit, and this is 20 weeks before the outbreak of the orchestration of evil through COVID, quote unquote. And I pulled this summit together with some of the world's leading scientists and doctors precisely in order to warn the world. We knew what was coming. That is Del Bigtree, who's now been taken on by Bobby Kennedy to head up that side of the presidential campaign in vaccinations and health and so on. But Del Bigtree, as many know, the leading voice against that program. That's His Grace, the Bishop of Jerusalem, Ria Abu El-Assal, who I've worked closely with for many years. And Dr. Sandra Rose Michael and others, the Paramount Chief of Cote d'Ivoire, Sylvestre Nakale, one of our commissioners, a wonderful human being. And so it goes on. Here are the sultans and hereditary leaders gathered in my living room. And I say that because it's a disgrace that a private human is required to bring these ancient governments and nations together, because nothing extant in the paraphernalia, the apparatus of a quadrillion-dollar multilateral governance structure, stealing and heisting trillions of dollars off the taxpayer and the public purse, does nothing to unify, nothing to restore or to redeem. It's left to us to do it. That is the King of Kings, Raja Samu Samu. And the International Tribunal, this is the Commission of Inquiry into Human Trafficking and Child Sex Abuse, that we had to self-finance, almost crippled me financially, I can tell you. I'm on the left there, then there's our Associate Justice, then our Chief Justice, then His Grace the Bishop of Jerusalem, and then Vanita Patel, MBE, a very brave, noble woman from Britain, and then Robert David Steele, a former CIA spy turned chief counsel for the Judicial Commission. I appointed him quite wisely to this position. And then we have the former Secretary of State, the Honorable Dave Kilgore on the right, the Nobel Prize nominee Ethan Gutmann in the middle, and the chap on the third from the right there on the giving expert testimony, a doctor who was forced for many years to surgically remove the organs of living men and women of the Falun Gong under the Chinese Communist Party's terror reign. And this is just one of hundreds of hearings which we self-financed and put together, a virtual court, and this seating here in Westminster, London, to get the truth out to the world about what is happening. It is left to good men and women to do it. So we continue to do this with the International Tribunal. This is Dr. Zach Bush on the below right, and geoengineering hero Dane Widgington top left, the man who exposed Monsanto crimes against humanity through glyphosate and murdered hundreds of millions of humans, bottom left, Jeffrey Smith. He and his team of 12 or 13 researchers leading the fight against the weaponization of our food. Without this man, we would never have exposed Monsanto and their crimes of ages. Good humans, that's my point. Dr. Robert O. Young, the man who's been most weaponized and set upon by the medical status quo in the United States. Why? Because he had an unheralded success rate at curing stage 4 cancer. And he is now facing God knows how long in prison, not for the first time. Can't say anything about him. Del Bigtree, Jim Humble, who just died at the age of 92 or 93 a few months ago, on the run, in hiding, in Mexico. What's his crime? His crime was discovering chlorine dioxide as a metallurgist and a geologist many, many years ago, living in Africa, working in Africa with the mines, seeing thousands of his miners dying of malaria, feeding them in tents and nursing them, and some of them asking to have some sweetener in their chlorinated water, which was the potted water. And he put a bit of pineapple juice in the water, fed it to them, started to see that those patients of his that were fed pineapple juice and chlorinated water were getting out of their deathbeds within a few hours. So he started to work on the chemistry and realized that when you put citric acid together with a particular molecule, you create an active molecule called chlorine dioxide. And he worked on that cure. It became a cure for malaria. He then gave that cure to various governments in Africa. They had tens of thousands of successful patients getting off deathbeds from the biggest killer on earth, or so the United Nations tells us. Malaria is the biggest killer on earth. And Jim Humble, God love him, goes to the United Nations and offers chlorine dioxide, his discovery, to them freely. It can cure someone from their deathbed for less than 2 cents per patient. It could have cured the biggest killer on earth 30 years ago, 25 years ago. He was hounded ever since. He died in hiding in Mexico with the US government after him and the United Nations forces after him. The point I'm trying to make is that we don't have any friends upstairs. Again, I'm a former director general in the intergovernmental sector in the United Nations, and I do not wear that as a badge of honor. To my credit, I tried to hack into that organization, and I discovered what I discovered in the basement. And I'm not trying to make enemies, because I know enough good people in power all around the world to know that we've got a fighting force on the inside of the evil apparatus. But evil empire is collapsing. It needs to be brought to its knees. It is, it's to do with technology. It's to do with a change in media. It's to do with a change in academia. It's to do a change in entertainments and the way that we predictably program the outcome through bad entertainments. All of that is part of it. But the singularity issue is consciousness. Again, the degree to which you and I, in the living moment, can move into convention by the grace of God with pure truth, and then conduct right action in this world every day of our lives. Because where we do that, the road rises up to meet us. The wind lifts our wings. We are met by the grace of God. We carry all the protections necessary. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks for honoring all those great men, Sasha, and women, David Steele, Humble, Del Bigtree, and Dr. Robert O. Young, which, by the way, he's 2 speakers away from now. He'll be here with us.
Wonderful.
So thank you for honoring them. Chief Phil Lane was on. If anybody knows him, and you can call him and ask him to come back on. He was going to be the next one I was going to call on, and then he left us when I didn't call on him. Maybe he had to go. I don't know. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more hands. Sasha, how much time do you have?
I have another 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, so please, everybody, if you have a question, just ask your question. If you want to share something and there's time, we'll come back after everybody's had a chance to ask their question. So let's go. I'm going to go to Jacqueline Noble. Aloha, Jacqueline. And then we'll go over to Crown Majesty.
Aloha. Such a great honor to speak and to listen to you, Sasha Stone. I've followed you for many years. I don't want to take much time, but I just want to say I'm very humbly grateful for all the information that you've shared here. Very powerful. You were mentioning about the bloodline and the purification, and if that's how you put it. But I've been traveling now in Central America, and I can see the grid lines. I work with the grid lines, and I can see how the womb of our Mother Earth is being activated right now to amplify the prophecy of the Condor Eagle and the rainbow prophecy right now, creating the energetic grid line of unification. So I was guided to be here at this time. So my question is, the guidance that I had is about tribe and community, and living together like a tribe, because the indigenous people are the only ones on our planet that know how to live in harmony with each other in nature. So going back to the principles of indigenous living practices and how to unify that in our community. So I'm seeking a community of where we can regenerate income, we resource together, and we live together. And I know that is, there's how do we reclaim the lands, and how can we establish community right now? I've been seeking community in Costa Rica. I'm now in Guatemala. I'm near the ancient Mayan ruin of Tikal and Macanche. And just, observing communities and how we live and how there's been an infiltration, as you mentioned, in the consciousness, degrading the consciousness, keeping us in the grid, the reptilian brain of survival. And so we're always going to stay in this matrix if we're in survival. And the only way that I can feel through my inner guidance is to live together, to coexist together so that we can thrive, and we can only thrive together. So I'm just seeking community, if you know of any, or how we can reestablish communities together so that we can resource together, build homes, regenerate income together, and go back to the consciousness of tribe again and the unity. And if you have any insights or awareness of what you share about community, I know you've been working with community for a long time, because I followed you, I think in Mexico, you had a community in the beginning. So yeah, would love to hear any insight.
I'll jump in there. The question was connected to how do we reclaim land and restore communities. So I'll just address those two, because any one of us could wax lyrical on the subject for infinity. But the reclaiming of the land, how do you do something in this world? Well, the answer is by doing it. Okay, so how do we do anything? By doing it. And it's the doing it that is actually the issue. It's not that we don't know how to do it, because we all variously know how to flee Sodom and Gomorrah. We all variously know how to swing from fiat currency subjugation into crypto coin and freeing up our own indentureship to the banking system. We all variously know about, voting with our wallet and choosing to buy clean foods and not poisonous foods. We all variously know the how, but enacting, embodying, and manifesting is largely the issue. And that's because we're still entrained and trapped, or so we believe ourselves to be. And there is a huge distinction between consciousness and consciousness in action. I care not a jot for consciousness. Consciousness in action for me means everything. I want a man who has 2 testicles that are dropped, who is able to walk out of his front door, is able to wrestle to the ground any godless creature that tries to harm him or his family, his women folk, or his children. That's the kind of man I respect, not the kind of man that cowers indoors in an armchair with his finger on a digital button, making some kind of remote opinion on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. There is a huge distinction between consciousness again and consciousness in action. We are all required now to enact, embody, and manifest, because we are the meek who are inheriting the earth, so long as the meek are bold enough to do so. So there's a paradox and a conundrum. The meek are actually the boldest amongst us. The meek, the ones who have humility of heart, sufficient to receive the benediction of grace, are the ones who are able to actually strike out and say no. No permission granted, not this day. Get thee behind me, Satan. That is the grace of God that courses through us. Every righteous human knows what is right and what is wrong. So it's not about how do we engineer or articulate conscious community. Conscious community will emerge by the grace of God, and it'll be a seamless and beautiful exercise, but we must stand in the flame of pure truth and conduct right action and set the ideal, set the intention of living in conscious community. Yes, I'm deeply involved and deeply invested in creating, priming a canvas right now. I've done this in Bali. I'm doing it now in Mexico on the Mayan Riviera, where we are beginning the process of groundbreaking and building out a very, very large and complex New Earth Sanctuary, which is a jurisdiction which is being powered up by our own technologies, because we know how to power up a grid on so-called 0 point. This is not complicated. negotiating with the municipal and federal government to keep the jackals away. That takes a bit of brinksmanship and a bit of diplomacy. But that's a conversation which I'm very somewhat expert at, given my diplomatic credentials in the past. I'm not nervous about sitting down with heads of state or ministers or municipal, executives. I've done this for many, many years. Everyone needs to be humble of heart, sufficient to receive the benediction of God, but incredibly bold, sufficient to kick doors down if you need to, or certainly to defend the spirit and to defend righteousness and to defend those who are being bullied or harassed in your community. That's community to me. Not the degree to which we can hide somewhere in some lovely haven that's over yonder hills and unlikely to be tracked and traced by the satanic status quo. God knows the satanic status quo will find you. People telling me for the last few years, oh, buy gold, buy silver. What nonsense. What nonsense. I could have made literally $1 million every 6 months if I had subscribed to some of these offers to me as an influencer. I've turned them all down. In fact, in 2016, I turned A1M1 Sino, who some on this call will know, when I was offered by him, a wonderful man, $1 billion in bullion, in Asian gold, literally offered to me to start the New Earth economy. I turned it down. I will not accept anything that is a measure of scarcity to be used as the source code of an economy for the New Earth. It cannot be that way. What a nonsense. And as far as stockpiling gold is concerned, think about it. What happens on the eve of war? Every war, your friendly government does a gold grab. You're required to surrender the gold to the government at a price the government sets for you. The government is owned by the Rothschilds and the De Beers and the same old Sabbatean invisible masters who always rigged the damned prices. So come now, let's stop playing into this theater. We do not want an economy that is predicated on scarcity, on something which is scarce. An economy must be predicated on something which is abundant, limitless, like fellowship, like creative genius, good ideas, wise dreaming, our capacity to dig ditches and plant seed beds. All we need to do is hit the switch in the head. That's it. The meek inherit the earth, but only when the meek stand up to do so. I can invite you to come and visit us in Bacalar Laguna in Mexico, of course, and learn a bit more about the metric which we're beginning to set into place. It's going to take a while. This is a 5-year project. I anticipate 2,000 residents and 1,000 to 1,500 visitors a day when we finish. And I'm setting it up as a planetary template, again, with a microgrid that is connected to our own technologies that we control, proprietary technologies. And that is fully remediated, fully protected with the frequency technology that we've got, which is being built into all the homes and all the buildings. All of our built environment is based on ancient Vastu and Vedic Vastu principles and Feng Shui principles and spatial dynamic principles of harmonium connected to the fall of the ancient Tatarian Empire, when all of these great buildings were also built as living technologies, with dielectric antennas, steeples, and the way in which you connect the building to the paramagnetic forces of the earth. This was an ancient science, and we're resurrecting that in the sanctuary for sure, and using spatial dynamics and spatial harmonics in the built environment, and plasma protection with the frequency technologies, which we've been negotiating with the Russian cosmonaut space program. And we have those technologies already available through our New Earth Pharmacy and through our New Earth Horizon. So we've got technologies, we've got the microbial formulas that can grow the antigens to every disease known to man. I took containment of those 3 patents earlier last year. And we already have the spike protein neutralizer and the weaponized E. coli neutralizer formulas hit the American soil about 2 weeks ago and is doing very well. So we know how to address the existential threat of the global depopulation agenda that is being promulgated through, again, the agrochemical and pharmaceutical enterprise and through the vaccination program and so on and so forth. This is a conversation which gets very uncomfortable for many people because many people were foolish enough to surrender their sovereignty and put their arms out to the local health officials. And as I say quite shamelessly, you need to seriously reconsider and rethink why it is that you moved against your deepest instinct. Why would you do that? Why would you ever give in to fear, number one? Simply because the government says so. Well, when did the government ever serve you or I? No one can ever answer me that question. Oh, they built roads. Please stop that nonsense. Governments did not build roads for you, okay? They do nothing for you. They may pave millions and millions of square miles using asphalt and chemical byproducts from the petrochemical industries, which is all a profiteering and racketeering godless exercise. They may tarmac over nature and create straight lines through the undulations of nature, destroying the natural connectivity of all ecosystems, all living systems. And you think that we should thank governments for roads? I don't think so. I say break the roads up. We don't need them. We had all sorts of craft in the ancient times, the Vimana and so on. We know how to make things float anti-gravitationally. Even my own science team, made up of rocket scientists, incidentally, and hyperdimensional physicists, we know how to do that. Now, the problem is the governments and their dirty little tricks of compliances and regulations. UL and CE certification. Sorry, not allowed to build that. No, can't sell that to anyone. Never get onto a shelf. No, that's wire fraud. You can't sell something which isn't sanctioned by the government. Oh, that's a neat trick. Do you get the picture? It's all a goddamned heist, a godless heist, all of it. We need to retrieve and redeem. So building conscious community, to answer the question and sign off on that noble question, it's not just about how we can huddle together and plant tomatoes. That's important. I'm not maligning that. It's really important that we know how to incubate seeds. We know how to breathe on them, that we salivate on them, that we put them into the earth, and that we drink water with consciousness, that we have a sacrament in every action of our lives. This is very necessary and needful. I'm simply saying that the idea that we have about conscious community is factored in by a Saturnian, Luciferian government apparatus. And until we dismantle that apparatus by the grace of the living God, we will never be able to create that kind of conscious community that you are envisioning, because it's never been allowed. Every great and noble prophet and guru in the last a century or 2 centuries have tried to do that since the 1800s. They can't do it. It's outlawed. It's illegalized. So we have to, on the one hand, simply do things by doing them, but we have to consciously also disidentify from the apparatus and stop participating in the theater, which is paying coin to Caesar, rendering unto Caesar that which Caesar says is his due. Stop paying personal income taxes. I've been saying it for years. There's nothing wrong with saying it. There's no law against saying that. There is actually a universal law and God's law against you paying personal income tax, because it's you defrauding yourself against your own birth bond and treasury bond. Now, if people understood enough about that, then the story, the idea of conscious community wouldn't even come about. We'd have a conscious city. We'd have conscious society. But we're all participating and genuflecting into the fraud against ourselves by paying coin. Merchant taxes, go ahead. Absolutely. I pay business taxes. I pay them upfront and I pay them on time. And I have no problem with paying business taxes. I think it's right and proper. I'm talking about personal income tax. It is a goddamn crime against yourself. You were never required by law, true law, any law, to pay personal income tax, only by statutory coding, which again is white man's poison. Be very careful. This is the franchise of the Vatican, the Catholic Church. Government and fictionalizing and securitizing and monetizing time and motion is the work of the devil. Stop participating on that checkerboard. Stop taking the knee. Learn how to redact, rescind, revoke, retract. Get off the checkerboard. that playing field. You can still live in the city. You can still drive a car. One of the guys on my last tour in the United States died on that tour. He was a true sovereign. We lost a number of people on that tour. As those who follow my work know, it was a dangerous tour. 6 people died, all said. The Arise Resurrection and the Arise Freedom Tour across the whole of America. It was ghastly. We did it because it was necessary at that time. But I can tell you that the first casualty was a beautiful soul called Peter who died on our tour 2 weeks into the tour. We found his body in the hotel room. The police came. Do you know they couldn't come into the room when the police ran his details, his name and numbers? They couldn't come in to retrieve his body. They stood at the threshold of the door in the hotel and said, sorry, we've run his numbers. He's a true sovereign. We have no jurisdiction. We can't retrieve his body. You have to get a private coroner, contact his family. Good luck. And they left. Not a joke. That's the degree to which real sovereign jurisdiction actually works. They do not have any control of your bones, your body, your bond, your future. Do you know that right now, when you die, your birth bond is flipped into a death bond and you're still traded on death? Dead souls like Gogol, something out of the Russian gulag? It's beyond this Saturnian thrall that we live in. And again, I'll sign off by saying this to try and inject a little confidence into this rather dismal story I've just struck for you. I've met with hundreds of leaders, presidents, prime ministers, ambassadors, plenipotentiaries, kings, sultans, queens. It's been my wheelhouse for a long time. And I've been inquisitive and I've lent in on inquiry and investigation. And I've asked thousands of questions, had thousands of conversations, and I've conducted myself in honor and I've been received. And I'm blessed. What I've learned is that there are really good people in leadership all around the world, really good people in the body politic, really good people on the ground floor. The apparatus of the devil was slowly installed and inserted and became a cage system. And again, it is you filling out forms with block black capital letters. There's you participating in the spells and bonds. You continuing to play into the fiat currency is you also perpetrating that same nonsense. And you paying coin to Caesar with your personal time and motion and income tax, your personal income tax, that is a crime against the age and against yourself. So do something by doing it to enact, embody, and manifest, but at the same time, understand that we do have the tools, the means, and the wherewithal to disidentify from the satanic matrix and actually be rid of it. That's the new flight from Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's connected to consciousness in action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Sasha.
you. Thank you.
Sasha,
yes.
sorry.
No,
Are you good?
thank you. And yeah, I would love to participate in your community in Mexico, or visit, or whatever you're willing to offer would be amazing to learn.
Thank you. You can find that New Earth Bacala online, or through Sasha Stone, or through, I think, through any of the websites. But look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Okay,
You
thank you.
got time for one more, two more, Sasha?
Yes, John.
Okay,
Yes.
Selma, go ahead, Selma.
Okay,
Aloha.
sorry, I'll make this quick. Greetings from Mexico. Thank you for answering the question about your project here. Many, many uncounted blessings and gratitude for not just your tremendous words, but the actions, as you said. So the answer to Mexico that I had, the question before, was answered, but instead I'll ask, what other things can we do specifically to support your work?
Thank you for the very kind words. I'm not soliciting any support per se, but I really thank you for the kindness and for the thought. Certainly, the work that I'm doing with a great many noble people around the world, and I work amongst a lot of colleagues within the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, the World Hereditary Council, which we're setting up at the moment to participate in helping to be the moderator of the tribunals, which we will start to initialize as we invite First Nation peoples from all around the world to start to give their expert testimony and begin to redress the historical imbalances of the Vatican crimes and so on. So that International Tribunal for Natural Justice, itnj.org, certainly is worth looking in on as we begin to frame the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the Doctrines of Discovery, which I think we will launch in midsummer this year. And of course, I'll be reaching out to this alliance and to John and to speaking at great length about where the intersect is and how we can serve one another in this noble enterprise. The New Earth Pharmacy, pharmacy with an F, .com, the newearthpharmacy.com is my greatest offering and gift right now to the world. And this is the microbiological formulas, which were essentially brought to my attention through 5-Star Military Brass in Romania a year ago. I've financed and incubated the first 2 microbial formulas, which address the greatest threat facing every human, which is the weaponization of our gut biome through the so-called VAX program and the glyphosate, fluoride, aluminum trifecta. That everyone who knows anything about biochemistry knows that the weaponized E. coli and the so-called spike protein replication is now the gravest threat that we're facing as a species because it is exponential. We were visited by senior military just before Christmas who informed us that the US military itself is facing multiple 1,000% increase in morbidities and fatalities, many thousands of percent increase in the last 36 months. So we have a serious problem on our hands right now with death, disease, turbo cancers, and so on. So the spike protein neutralizing microbial formula and the weaponized E. coli formulas are a thing that I'm most concerned about getting to the world. And I am very interested in looking to see where and how we can get these antigens, antibodies into mass production amongst the Native American populations, because they need them desperately. There are no resources, very little money or resource to be able to afford them. We need to look at how we can amp up mass manufacture and distribution of these microbial formulas. And just so you know, the same microbiological technology of us being able to grow the antigens and antibodies to every disease applies to everything now, whether it's Alzheimer's or Crohn's disease or Lyme disease or diabetes. All diseases have counterpoint strains that we know how to create the antigens to deal with those diseases. So I think that we'll see in the next 5 years to 7 years an end altogether of a quadrillion-dollar global pharmaceutical hegemony over human health and wellness, courtesy of these kinds of technologies. And my interest has been simply in the best in class out there and then doing what I can to get them to the market, so to speak. So I would suggest, to answer your question, look in on the newearthpharmacy.com, pharmacy with an F. And also, if you wish, please look in on the newearthhorizon.com, that site, because we have other technologies and things which we are offering through that platform. Thank you for the question.
John, I'd like to interject here. I'd like to ask Sasha a question.
Go ahead.
We can't hear you, John. Go ahead, Nelson.
Right. Good day to you, Sasha Stone. I'm coming from the United Kingdom of New Zealand, the original jurisdiction of the inherent bloodlines, which is the timeline. Every bloodline on the planet has been represented through New Zealand.
Yes. And
if you want to, I'll put this challenge to you and your tribunal. The perpetrators of everything that's going on this planet is operating from New Zealand.
Yes.
And everyone here around the world are being represented, including yourself. If I'm able to share the screen, these are the people representing every one of you right now and sign off on everything that has happened since 28th of October, 1835. It's a global franchise, and this is where COVID was mandated from. This is where the United Nations is controlled from, through a counterfeit Roman Catholic Church that was established in South Australia. So I've posted a whole lot of stuff on chat, which is the truth, facts and evidence, to show you where the control is coming from. Okay? So what I'm saying is we've given notice to this tribunal, Waitangi National Trust Board, that represent everyone on the planet through companies, through security markets, and through takeover. And this is where the new form of trading in slaves and child trafficking is operating from. Okay? And this is under the Waitangi National Trust Board Act, which is a rollover trust. If we talking about Sedeke Trust, we're going right back to the Roman financial crisis 33 AD. This is where the control is. The head of the serpent, if you want to call it that, with the 5 eyes, Great Britain, America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. The United Nations is controlled from New Zealand. Okay, so if I'm allowed to just share the screen, these are the people representing you right now without your consent. And they're mandating things around the world without your consent. I posted the Waitangi National Trust Board Act, so you will see in there how they control everyone worldwide. There is a Waitangi Endowment Act, 1932-33 as well, which controls all land worldwide. Okay, so I'm bringing this to you. We've already given them notice. We're trying to enforce statutory management or liquidate the head of the control. Just to let you know where it's coming from, and if your team is able to come here and enforce that statutory management, to liquidate that entity, to dissolve that entity, to denounce that entity, this is where it's all at. So I'd just like to put that challenge to you, Sasha Stone and your tribunal and your team. Come to New Zealand.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. If you unshare the screen now, I'll pop back on and just address that. Yes, I've been made conversant with the Waitangi and the importance of this great work that you're doing for some years. One of my core trustees and fellows of the New Earth University, Thomas J. Brown, was involved for many, many years working along these lines. And Marina Waitangi here, who's opened with prayer today, is a beloved sister. I, for one, understand the importance of New Zealand, to be sure, and the first light, and that to me is the point. That is the whole point, is the first light. And when the world understands that piece, it is so archetypal, so important. And so I agree with you that New Zealand, in that sense, is the tip of the spear. And it is not by happenstance that the Saturnian Babylonian enterprise of cronies landed in New Zealand as its preserve. And New Zealand is an integral element of the 5 eyes for this reason as well, which we understand the importance of that. So to be sure, it was our intention, and certainly my intention. I do not control the council that we're setting up. It'll be First Nation hereditary leaders from around the world who will take the vote on such matters. But I can tell you that in light of what you've just said, and in light of the fact that I know absolutely what you've just said, it would be my recommendation that any first expert witness testimony would need to happen somewhere between the Kingdom of Hawaii and their very important claim and Aotearoa and New Zealand, without any question of doubt. The reason why I suggest that the Kingdom of Hawaii or Hawaii is important as well, in a similar archetypal sense, is because Hawaii, in that sense, is where it's positioned in the ocean, midpoint between, in that ocean, it is really the dampening down of the true power of the ancestors in that part of the world. The Maui strikes that occurred last year were very, very connected to the satanic ritualistic nonsense that's going on in the deep state basement, and the need to strike energetically and try to crack the spirit in that part of the world. So we understand, those of us who are old and ugly and wise enough to know how the deep state Babylonian Mysterium cult operates as well, understand that this is all black magic, all bad magic. But I salute you, and I hear you, and I for one hear the call of your ancestors.
You mute, excuse me, can you mute Ken Raymond?
That's okay. Go ahead, let him finish. Go ahead, Sasha.
Bill, that was pretty much the end. I was simply saluting the Crown representative of the Crown there, because I hear the song. I hear his song loudly.
I'd like to echo that. I'd like to echo that.
If you look further towards Samoa, the ancient bloodlines that came out of Te Moananui Kiwa, there's 7 bloodlines coming off Rata, and that's all of Te Moananui Kiwa, but it's centralized in Samoa. That's why they changed the international date line there, because when you see the equator and the international date line, they're operating everything off the coordinates 0, 0, 0, 0. Yeah. That's where the administration was moved to. That's where they set up UNESCO. That's where they set up the World Bank. That's where they set up UNDP. It's Samoa.
So I've actually physically been in all of these places for the last 14 months. Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu. I'm currently in the Hawaiian Islands, and I lived in Aotearoa, New Zealand for 2 years, from 2011 to 2013. And everything that you're speaking, sir, is truth. It's truth. The colonial systems from Canada to Australia and ending in New Zealand is where they basically are rolling this out. You're absolutely right. From systems, financial systems. Think about it. How long have you had FPOS in New Zealand? How long is, and the rest of the world doesn't even know, they don't even know what FPOS is. I mean, it's the future systems, and they roll them out and test them. But what I would, and actually Sasha hit it right on the head, and it's not New Zealand, it's Aotearoa. Aotearoa, the kingdom of Aotearoa, needs to stand up and unite with others in the Pacific, specifically the Hawaiian kingdom, Tuvalu, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu.
Yep.
I've personally been to each one of these countries for many, many months this year. And what you're speaking is massively important. There's a gentleman named Billy, I won't be specific, but he ran for prime minister against Jacinda. And New Zealand runs the Dominion voting systems, just like the United States runs the Dominion voting systems. It's through the Dominion voting systems that these so-called prime ministers and presidents are selected and not elected, period. And everything that people have talked about, where we basically just have to buy our local God-given food that we can grow decentralized in our own lands and with our own decentralized currency from this system that we're talking about. And, you know, there'll be future, if you want, I'll share a screen and show you these systems that I'm speaking
Michael,
of.
I'm sorry to do this to Michael. I'm so sorry. I have to leave because I have a car that's been waiting for 20 minutes for me downstairs. There's a very important meeting that I was pledged to attend. Phil, Michael Proper is the perfect man to now share his screen. Trust me, I know where this is going. And I'm very excited about this platform and about this gathering of noble souls. But alas, I'd allocated the maximum 2 hours and I have to leave. Is that acceptable?
Sasha, yes, thank you for everything. But before you leave, I just want to announce so that you're aware of it. On Sunday, March 3rd, there's a Sovereign Summit online from 1 to 3 p.m. I believe Night Owl's posted into the chat twice already. Hopefully she can post it again. But it's going to be coming up very quickly. Sunday, March 3rd, 2024, 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you're around and you can make it, and everybody, you're all welcome to join us there. And I want to say thank you for everything today, Sasha. You're right on the mark. And if Mike wants to take it for a few more minutes, and then we'll go to the last couple of questions, hopefully, and we can close out.
Thanks very much. And friends, I'll put my contact points in here. I would just urge anyone needing urgently to get hold of me, send to an email here. I'll just pop that in here and the 2 URLs. Thank you very much, John.
Also, Sasha, sorry to interrupt you. If Mariam has if you have a presentation or something that you'd like to attach, the recording comes out within 24 hours of this Zoom. So everybody will get it automatically. You don't have to ask for it. If there's anything that you want me to add to it, if you get it to us soon, like tonight or to early tomorrow, it'll be attached with the recording and go out with the recording.
That's very kind of you. Thank you so very much. And thank you everyone on this platform. It's been delightful joining you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Here's
Sasha.
Sasha.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sasha.
But,
Oh, bye now. Thank you.
Love you. Bye.
Michael. Go ahead, Michael, if you want to finish saying what you're saying. And by the way, Michael, I wish I would have said it when Sasha was on. So we're in the process. You heard me at the start of the meeting say 60 sovereign indigenous nations, soon to be 160. And that's because we're waiting for 108 signatures from the Pacific Rim, including all those nations that you just mentioned. So if you can help us out with any way, shape, or form, put your information into the chat. We're trying to consummate that right now.
Yeah, we can help in a massive way. So not only just
Awesome.
with contacts, but actually pulling it all together and bringing a system together that can actually replace the financial systems, the identity systems, the land management systems, all within one ecosystem. So I don't know if you're able to see my screen. Let's see. Can you see this okay? Just a confirmation that you're able to see my screen.
Yes, that's great.
So this is in effect the different countries that we just talked about. The gentleman that brought up the question was 100% spot on, where these different parts of the world, and it's basically countries that live on their own. They understand how to get along. They understand how to connect with the earth. They understand decentralization as a core principle. That is where it can actually start. And the Pacific is full of that. There's also 9 other parts of the Atlantic that are currently coming into it. But they're using systems that are all basically decentralized. So what that means is these types of services from life to, and it all connects based upon a phone. If you look at a very simple model where you basically have a phone that connects to decentralized storage and validators. So you're removing the centralized systems to offer services around who you are, around how transactions happen, reputation, voting, land management, how you connect to the current fiat and monetary systems, all into this new decentralized system. Because the current monetary systems will end up going digital. The goal is to make sure that they don't go digital in a way that's centralized. And so this provides choice for humanity to be able to do that. It also has other identity sides to it. So I can pull up, different examples. There are different parts of the world that are already using this. I'll go through what the Kingdom of Hawaii is doing. So if you actually have an Apple phone, you can, or an Android phone or a Clear phone, which is what we have built with the Clear companies, you can download an app called Hawaiian Life that actually ties to specifics around an individual's identity and decentralizes their world. In some cases, there are phones that actually come with it pre-installed, but it enables a country to be sovereign and independent, run its own financial system, and not only that, but be able to link into future asset systems that individuals can actually own and manage, whether it's their home, whether it's a car, whether it's a simple thing as a bicycle. But instead of allowing your assets and identity to go from generation to generation, and in most cases go unclaimed by states, you can actually start with your identity or your children's identity, whether that's a birth certificate or an adoption certificate, whether that's a marriage certificate and how you connect and create life, or whether that's actually how you pass on. So Sasha touched on some of the elements around how we live, how we are born, how we die physically, But the key is, how can we be sovereign and spiritually be independent? And today, like even in the United States of America, the Supreme Court basically identified that driving is a right, and it's not a constitutional ability to actually block that. So having a driver's license and is really a way to be able to help the existing systems identify, but we can choose how we identify, not in gender, but how we identify as far as our name. Our names are very important and sacred. Our last name should never be identified, but allow a process of scanning to be able to verify who you are through this process. It's not just around identity, but also how do you create a company or have an asset within a company? How do you actually have land and hold land? Whose land is it? We all understand we're visitors on this earth, and God, Aqua, is actually who actually has really ownership of this earth. We're just visitors here and stewards here. But let's say that there's a problem. We're talking about this tribunal and some of the issues around what's happened. There's actually an online jurisdiction that covers the whole earth where people can come in and say, I have a problem. And it's real similar to what we're doing here with this Zoom system. But I have a problem and I want to be able to take issue with this landline, or maybe with this type of an issue that happened with an individual. And it can be private or it can be public, and it can be transparent, and you can provide a process where justice can actually happen instead of who actually has the most money wins. Imagine a system that not only gives a driver's license out or a registration or a title for a vehicle, but it's decentralized. Like what Sasha was talking about around registration systems, we have to rebuild them, but we have to conform to the existing system so we can operate with them. So imagine a license plate that never expires, that actually can identify the individuals cryptographically without providing their full name, but it can actually say this car's not stolen, this car's insured. Imagine insurance in the future that costs much less, because it's not done in the same money-driven based approaches what these secret combinations are built off of. But it gives you the ability to say, hey, if I've got a problem with it, whether it's the actual physical vehicle or maybe an accident, or how's the vehicle financed, or is the vehicle, who can drive it and who owns it? So the ability for a system, the current system, to be able to interact with that. And I'll show it to you firsthand. So it's really simple how it works. You basically grab an application, Tuvalu Life, Samoa Life, Vanuatu Life, Aotearoa Life. You can literally grab these applications and you scan. Instead of using a username and password, you synchronize with your fingerprint 12 words. That is your identity. You don't need to use username and passwords or other systems. And you can actually log in and you can do certain things that we just talked about, whether it's around birth or adoptions, marriage, death. Like we're in a council right now, whether we realize it or not. We're all convening together in the digital world, but we're doing it in this particular meeting on a Zoom platform, which is actually centralized. It's moderated, it's controlled. There'll be certain realities that will happen within these types of meeting places in the future, and they won't scale to gain mass adoption. But imagine if we could create councils that actually have the ability to vote and act, and they actually mean something. Or if we have disputes and we can actually join together, maybe in a class action suit, etc. Or if you want different licenses, maybe it's for a weapon, maybe it's for an automobile, maybe for it's a boat. For instance, in New Zealand, you can have weapons. And I'm actually currently in Hawaii, which is a state in the United States of America. From a state standpoint, it's really a kingdom that was taken over by Americans versus Hawaiians. That's a whole nother beautiful conversation. But the state of Hawaii is saying that the Constitution of America, which supposedly the state is saying that they're a part of, people can't carry weapons anymore. So the First Amendment is actually gone. So you can see how they're rolling this out. You talk about Aotearoa or New Zealand being the first place where it's happening. They're doing it in test markets all over the world. And I can say this because, like Sasha, I've been to a lot of these ecosystems. I've been to the World Economic Forum. I've been involved in this my whole adult life. It's all I've ever done. And when we talk about these people and these fellow travelers, these are systems that are God-given gifts because of the principles that they're built on. Decentralization, what I just did where I logged in just a second ago, I am something that I have, something that I do, something in a space and time, 5-factor verification to be able to do it. So Next meeting, we'll spend more time digging into it in the future for those that actually want to learn more. But this is very, very key and important for humanity. It's very important for you as individuals to understand. And I'm thankful for the time. I'm grateful for the body that literally created this Alliance for Indigenous Communities, because it is through Indigenous people that these technologies will come forward. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to play a video. There's a gentleman that was supposed to be on this call today, Phil Lane Jr. And I'm going to play
He was on, Mike. He was on.
I know. I saw him, and I pinged him and told him to come back. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a video that actually is him, and it's talking about all of this technology. Since 2005, I've personally been working with him directly, and it actually started here in the Hawaiian Islands. And I'm going to just listen to his words. They're absolute. This was not scripted. This was his voice. These are, he literally had one take on it. He actually hurt his back on the horse as well. So please just pay attention to what this is. And at the end of it, notice how he passes it from one generation to another. And I don't know, for those of you that don't know Phil, his heart is pure. His intent is pure, and even from birth. And there'll be a time where he won't physically be with us again. We need to listen to his words, and we need to align.
Mitakepi, my very, very beloved relatives of our human family. We live in a corrupt global system.
But are we a part of it?
Are we part of it? Are we part of it?
No.
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 No. We've been very patient as the few control resources we all need. The question is, can we change it?
We've all heard the voices shouting, it's not your turn.
Our heart aches to do more, to be more. But time is running out.
Time is running out.
Time is running out.
We start by completely trusting we can make a difference. Because with one heart and one mind and many bodies, in unity, we can do anything.
Together we must take unprecedented, unified action.
And transform the world around us.
No matter how challenging that may be.
Individual sovereignty, freedom, love, and justice unite us all.
Because there are Indigenous-led technologies coming.
That gives us all the opportunity to stand,
to give, to love.
That's what responsible technology should do.
If you are one of those who believe it's your turn,
stand together.
Rise up.
Everyone.
Everywhere.
You as a rising generation.
So I hope you're able to understand the heart and the intent that Phil drove and really just said through many hearts and many people in different bodies. We can unite. And instead of being divided where they can conquer us, united, we can do anything. So I'm grateful to be with you today and to be a part of this meeting. And I'm grateful for those that organized this and have worked so hard over the years. I look forward, to working with you and serving you and loving you. So I'll stop now and yield back. You're still on mute. Go ahead.
Thank you for joining us, Mike, number one. Number two, I just posted my personal information into the chat. What we can do is schedule where you can come in and be the guest speaker with your presentation so that everybody can get the benefit of it. And so if you could reach out to me, we can work that out. And thank you. Thanks, Sasha. And thank Chief Phil Lane. I'm sorry I didn't get to him. I was ready to call on him. And just as I was ready to call on him, he must have removed himself from the Zoom. So I think we only missed getting to one person, and that I'd like to close it up. I have my 8-year-old daughter coming. I haven't seen her in a month. And I'd like to finish on time so I could get my workout in before she gets here. with that, everybody, thank you. That was an unbelievable Zoom. Sasha, I think he hit the nail on the head. Unbelievable, very passionate, and he recharged my batteries.
I think he recharged all of us.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you, thank you.
Everyone.
Michael, save the chat.
Thank you. Yeah.
Marina, thank you for that great prayer. Mahalo, everybody.
Mahalo.
Thank you,
John.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Bye.
Recording stopped.
Hey, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
We'll talk later, John.
Okay.